This movie is so weird. It So to start off, let's really nail home what this movie is trying to say. This movie is trying to say a lot of different things, but above all else, this is not a bodybuilding movie. I saw an edit on TikTok and I was like, "Damn, okay, that's wow, all right. This is going to like talk about like the struggles of bodybuilding and body dysmorphia and like the how people will push themselves and abuse their bodies to become this perfection of sculpting and athleticism and the like, right? Cuz I mean, if you know me, I love bodybuilding. I am not a bodybuilder myself, obviously. I mean, but I I do like bodybuilding, right? I follow Sam Sulek. I watched a lot of the competitions with you know, back in the day with I've watched a few clips of Cutler or C-Bum nowadays and then I watched Pumping Iron with Arnold and all that other stuff. So and I also followed strongmen too, so like Brian Shaw and the Beast himself. But then there's also the other aspects of bodybuilding that I've always like Mike Mincer. I remember I really enjoyed his theories and his idea and his philosophy on building muscle and the like. Even though he himself was a very fucking crazy person, he was a very crazy man. His pre-workout was insane. But anyway, moving on. I want that is not what this movie is. It might have Mike O'Hearn in it, but Mike O'Hearn is wow. Was not expecting him to show up on the screen, but also was not expecting him to do what he did. So I have a lot of stuff right here about what this movie's about, and I'm just going to go off of some rapid fire beats and the like. Jonathan Majors in this is really interesting. He's really good. Despite the fact of what of Jonathan Majors as a person, I think I can still enjoy his acting capabilities as well, and he does act really well in this movie. Um, but let's rapid fire here, and I'll go through all of them. Life isn't fair. Uh, this is why you learn to fight. Gymcel the movie, toxic masculinity slash emasculating and power, positive reinforcement, Americanism, power and fascism, and entitlement without consciousness and sense of isolation. That was everything I got from this movie. So let's go over this one by one. Life isn't fair. This was something that Paw said near the very beginning of this movie. And this movie is really long. This movie is like 3 hours and 10 minutes, or 2 hours and 10 minutes. It felt like 4 hours. It felt like I was watching Titanic. It is redonkulous how long this movie is. But that in of itself is fucking bullshit, right? Life is not fair, but that does not mean that you have to go out and make it everyone else's problem because of the fact that life isn't fair to you, right? If anything, you should try and make it fair for everybody. You should try and make it to where these hierarchies and these systems of class and the like do not exist because you were affected by it, right? Because this notion of, oh, well, it's not fair and that's just the way life is. No, that is the way life is currently, but that is not the way life has to be, right? The world around us is fluid. It is material, and the conditions around it define it. So you have the potential to mold and manipulate it into being something better, but you have to work for it. So that one bit that Pawpaw said was right. Also, fuck this guy. He was in Vietnam. Fuck this guy, right? Who gives a shit about this Vietnam War vet? Like going off to some foreign country, shooting a bunch of Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, right? Though I will say there is a lot of nuance with the Vietnam War, obviously because of the draft and so on. And obviously, Paw Paw being a black man, there is a lot of layered nuance to that as well about being an American war hero and being black and being in a time where you were not being treated well in America at the tail end of segregation and then being sent off to war, right? And then being shown, well, you're American now, so that means you get to go be part of the draft too. You want to be treated equally? Well, here you go. Go fight for capitalism. Okay, so moving on. How this guy, the anger issues in this film is very interesting because it touches on a lot of different things about like how a man can kind of lose it. Oh my god, you can see Spider-Man. You can see my favorite 2002 or 2001? 2001? 2003? Or was it 04? No, I think 2 was 04. Anyway, my favorite American propaganda film, right there. I actually really do like Spider-Man 1 a lot, even though I very much understand how it's a product of the time after 9/11 and everything about patriotism and the imagery within it. But it's not like it's made by the fucking U.S. Defense Department of Defense. It's just cultural hegemony leaking into everything at the time. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. This is how you learn how to fight, right? This is why you learn how to fight. Because no matter how big you are, no matter how much many muscles you have to learn how to use those muscles, right? You've got a lot of torque, you got a lot of power, you got a lot of potential kinetic energy within those muscles. But you have to learn how to use those muscles and be limber with them instead of just, being big. Like, sure, having a lot of muscles, it will. Studies have shown that you can survive more damage with more muscle, right? Because of how dense it is compared to things like fat or normal tissue. So, there's always those stories about how bodybuilders will get stabbed and they'll be fine. Obviously, they'll still be hurt, but because of the density of their muscles, that they can survive more shit. So, learning how to fight, that's always important. And it allows you to fight against racism and allowing people not to call you racist slurs. That's another part of this movie, that they start touching on racism. That was really interesting. I did not expect them to talk about racism in this movie. But yeah, Jonathan Majors in the middle of like a cafe starts talking about, starts spouting racial slurs and the like. And like, I understand his frustration. He is more than justified to have these feelings, right? But the way that he handles it, I'm not saying that you need to be passive or complicit in racism. Absolutely fucking not. Fight racism no matter where it is. But the thing with how he was going on about it was he was just he wasn't he was just shouting. Like, it would have been more cathartic to see him, punch a guy and then, walk away. But no, he then like started spouting off and all this other stuff, right? And I understand why he did it. And then like police brutality, that's another thing, is that these guys, a bunch of these white cops show up and they beat the fucking shit out of him. Wow. They beat the shit out of him. And I can understand why, not the cops, absolutely fucking not. ACAB for life. But I can understand why Killian had these feelings in the first place, right? Because of these guys not coming out to paint his Pawpaw's shop, and they were giving him shit and all this other stuff. And like, instead of having like this sense of kindness and understanding that this is an old man, right? That there could be a problem of where subtext is that there was racism involved, right? Because his grandson, or his son, right, the shop owner's son, was being racist. So that must mean that he learned it from somebody. And given the fact that he wasn't willing to come out and just do like a courtesy another coat of paint to put this old man's mind at ease, it ended up with Killian, his anger issues spouting off and everything. And that's not to say that these anger issues are somebody else's problem. They are Killian's problem to deal with. But wow, yeah, there's just so many different aspects going on in this movie. Anyway, moving on, Gymcel the movie. This idea of having this anger towards society, right? But without having it be informed. Having it like there's this it literally is Gymcel the movie, where this guy goes, takes steroids, gets big because he needs a sense of masculinity. I mean, and I'm 6'1", right? I'm almost I'm almost the same weight as as Jonathan Majors or Killian is in this movie. I'm 6'1" and I'm about 209 currently, right? But I'm nowhere near as big as he is. Actually, I would probably say that based on his mass, he should actually be somewhere around 250 ish, right? But you know, muscle starts fucking exploding, right? So there's clearly going to be a difference between me and him, even if it's a 30-pound difference, because 30 pounds of muscle, god damn. Anyway, moving on. Like, going to the gym, and I go to the gym constantly, but I do it for self improvement. I do it because of a need and understanding that if I'm strong, I can help people around me. If I'm strong, I can, support people, right? I can also give great fucking hugs. But a lot of these other guys, they will go to the gym because it gives them a sense of masculinity. It gives them a sense of power. It gives them a sense of all this other stuff. And throughout this, we see the follies of that mindset of wanting to accomplish greatness, not just because of the sport, but because of something deeper within him, right? We see this every time he's in the gym, that it's his escape for his anger issues, and not in a positive way, but in a negative, self eating sort of way, right? And we can see that these issues could have been possibly started as far back as when he was a child, and childhood trauma and being isolated and all these other things. So, yeah, whenever I say it's Gymcel the movie, I mean that in the most literal term possible. And also celibate at the end of that. Jim celibate, yeah. Like his relationship with women and his reinforcement of everyone else is wrong. I'm the one that's right. I'm the one that needs to have power. I'm the one that needs to have this sense of belonging, and also scaring people off and all these other things, because you feel bad for him, but then you also see him as pathetic, but then you also like empathize with him at other points, but then you're like, he takes it to an extent where you're like, okay, dude, what the fuck is going on? Moving on, talking about toxic masculinity, is that it is toxic masculinity, like 100%. This idea that he feels the need to own guns, to have a sense of power. He needs to build muscle to have a sense of power, right? And then when he meets Brad, Mike O'Hearn, he gets emasculated, right? Not in a way of like positive reinforcement through relationship, and it just so happens to be queer. No, it is the idea of using queerness uh, and sex as a form of power. And that is an okay thing to do when it's consensual, but it's very clear that Killian was taken advantage of by Brad and being emasculated by him for a sense of power, right? The idea of touching his body and, Killian seeing him as perfect, his number one fan, this power dynamic between the two of them, and everything, and then him being abandoned by him after being met, after meeting him finally. Like, you can definitely see the sense of emasculating and toxic masculinity as well, to the point that it leads him to want to shoot up a place, right? To enforce his masculinity on the world around him. And obviously, power, and I've already talked about power and the like there. But then um there is a flip side to this, right? At the time, I wrote it down before I finished watching the scene, because later on it's recontextualized, is that sometimes you just do need a positive bit of reinforcement in your life to understand that you're not alone. And Brad gave that to Killian, but in a toxic way. But then later on in the movie, at the tail end, Paw Paw gave him that positivity in a very ironic way, because you can kind of see that this idea of war hero and Americanism and all this other stuff influenced Pawpaw, and then that influenced Killian. But whenever we see at the end where Pawpaw sees how hurt Killian is, that he gives him that reassurance anyway. And let's go on to, and that's that Americanism that I was talking about. And that ties into the final point, is power and fascism and entitlement without consciousness and sense of isolation. We see this at the very tail end of the movie, and it starts recontextualizing everything, especially with racism and everything like that, and bigotry. Is that Killian feels alone. He feels isolated. He feels like, one, also emasculation with the whole small deltoids, but then he like really self-loathes over that. He really like internalizes that and everything, and then he emasculates another man, and then you see the sense of toxicity of where he calls other people short, fat, ugly, and the diner, right? Back to that. That was what I was going to say about how strange, and how, he's justified in his feelings, but then he went about the wrong way, and like he's calling other people ugly, and other things like that. And why I say fascism and bigotry is because of the way that the guy doing bumps in the bathroom is, validating Killian, right? Because that's one of the biggest things about fascism and bigotry and things like racism and nationalism, and this also ties into Americanism, is that it shows how by feeling a sense of belonging can reinforce these power dynamics and these ideas, right? And how this guy doing bumps like has racism within him, talking about Muslims and black people, and then women are all the same. Like, this guy is straight up incel, but then this gym guy is being reinforced by that because of the isolation being caused of the conditions around him. And his own problems that he has is being validated instead of having a positive outlet through therapy. Because you can also see a bit of therapy failing in this because of how he is afraid to properly express himself to the therapist and tell the truth. And obviously there is this whole idea of entitlement with this guy doing the bumps in the this like incel dude in the fucking, what's it called, in the bathroom, right? Because he's talking about how, like, oh, they can bomb people all day long, but then I'll get arrested, right? Without understanding what's really going on at play here, right? Is that clearly he wasn't playing by the rules of the system, right? Like, he is so close to actually achieving class consciousness, but instead he is afraid. He is mad at the other fascist, right? It's so funny that you see this sort of shit, where all this sort of dichotomy and everything is going on. And, he lacks any sort of consciousness of what's actually going on, of why he is getting arrested, because he does this thing with his truck, and all this other shit, right? Because he sees that the world is against him or whatever. When, if anything, the world is actually trying to benefit and raise him up specifically because of his class position, and race and other things like that. That it's really funny to see him twist these ideas into them being like negative when they are, but then seeing them as like beta shit. It's very, very funny. It's very funny to me. Uh, but yeah, the sense of isolation and everything, and then we see at the very end where we see the shooting scene, but then it's revealed to be a hallucination, and there's this moment within where he is so deep in, where it's a very common thing that happens, where do you go through with it? Do you completely allow yourself to stay at the deep end? Or do you see the light and you finally swim to the surface? And Killian swam to the surface. And I do kind of agree with the final notion of the idea of a man is what he leaves behind, of the memory he leaves behind. And that can be a good message, right? The idea that it is how you left the world better than than how you arrived in it is what defines your life. That is a good message, but I can also see how that it's not that kind of message. It's more just an idea of leaving behind legacy, and that can be twisted in certain types of way. But yeah, I'm very glad that by the end we see this idea that he breaks away from the sense of toxicity and the like. He throws away the guns and everything. Not to say the guns are bad, obviously not, but they were a toxic part of that relationship to masculinity for him and what he was wanting to do, so he had to throw them away. And we see from the end that he has this picture of greatness in his mind of being on stage, and the crowd is gone, which could symbolize that he is in it for himself now and not just greatness, but also possibly individualism, which is not a good thing, but could also be the idea that he is doing it for himself, for the love of the sport and everything, instead of a toxic attachment to it. And then he's back in the garage training, and you see him, instead of he has this like newfound confidence within him, as he's finally detached from everything. And it's very up into interpretation, that is this the good ending or is this the bad ending? And it honestly just depends on how he views himself and his relationship to bodybuilding and the like now, after everything that he has gone through and the realization of what he has gone through. So yeah, this movie is very fucking weird. I can understand why a lot of people did not like it, because whoop, right, went right over their head, or they saw it and like they were like the gym bros and like, oh, right, or the cinema bros or whatever, they're like or whatever. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Very very weird. I'd give it like a 7 out of a 10. I would not rewatch it, but here I'm putting it out there for my thoughts and my feelings on it. So yeah, thank you all, and I'll see you guys in the next one. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon. It is free. There's also memberships as well. It'll link to the main channel and everything. And as always, here's the patrons. See you guys later. Bye bye. Thank you to the members and patrons, aka the members of the Ultimate Pirate Fleet: Sawlane, Peachy Bun, Sleepy Sheepy, Lolo Bartazal, Finch R, Emanali, Bell, Lily McMillan, Henri, Shira, Angel313, Andrew Ortega, Ariana Henry, Yoan, Test, Helen, Miles Morales, Buglarka Boggy, Moonze W, On You, Lind, the Vocaloid Nerd ARG, Distar Period, AT Period, Leia, Chocoboo / Chris, Annie, Sheng Guang, number one Ash Bradley fan, and Michaela Malone. And a very special thank you to the paid tiers, starting with Fresh Pirates, Yui Izumi. If you wish to support me and hear your name at the end of every single video, and even get your name grouped in with the same people that are a part of your tier, you can do so by becoming a member through the links in the description down below. You are all a part of the crew, but only some of you can achieve ultimate status. But then again, you've already heard the outro of this video. Thank you.